This one is by someone by the name of Frankie on PC. He's got 3.43 million subs, but the name interested me. It's called Battlefield 6 and the State of FPS Games. I'm curious what he says about how Battlefield 6 is going to affect the state of FPS games, because if you ask me, I think they're making a mistake already, and I'm hoping he gets into that, but we'll see. If not, I will. So let's dive in. Oh, yep. Good job, YouTube.
So a few days ago, the first footage of Battlefield 6, which is apparently coming out before April 2026, was revealed.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard that. They basically gave a launch window of end of 2025 to April 2026, and I'm guessing they're going to lean more in towards like the February, March 2026, I'm guessing.
What can we tell from it? Well, not a terrific amount. There's a lot of explosions. The weapon animations seem to be the same as 2042. There seems to be no tactical sprint, but if you look further down the hall, there appears to be a crouch sprint like Battlefield 5. Surprisingly more explosions, which seem to knock the players about. Very nice destruction particle effects. This seems to be the recon class, which has very Bad Company 2 vibes. And it seems there's possibly some physics-based destruction. Very Sen Crossing this, although maybe you'd...
It looks like I was literally just going to say, it looks like the finals when it comes to destroying
expect that,
stuff.
given how good destruction already is in the finals. I like the vibe. It feels very Strike at Car Candy, although apparently some leaks a few months back suggested that this map looks something like the end of Tenet. And it might actually be this map in the background here, maybe a sort of Mogadishu looking map, because there was a Black Hawk shown in the trailer as well. Also, according to the leak, one of the playtest maps was set in the Hollywood Hills, and it's Russians versus Americans, so maybe the Russians invade Los Angeles in the campaign. They've also started Battlefield Labs, which is like the community test environment from Battlefield 4. You can sign up for it now. It's incredibly popular. That guy was walking...
So what does he have here? You are 138,000th in line. I saw numbers as high as 2 million. So
very slow when I looked on there. It's under NDA, but I'm sure somebody will leak some footage.
Oh yeah, it's all going to get leaked.
I don't know if
the way
this
that they're doing it.
You know, too many cooks spoiling the broth. Because the map produced under the CTE, Operation Outbreak, 10 points if you remembered that was the name, because I didn't, isn't at least as memorable for me as some of DICE's homegrown maps like Arica Harbour, Siege of Shanghai, Damavan Peak, dare I say Operation Metro.
Everyone loved Metro.
Community feedback's always a bit of a question mark, because player feedback is always skewed towards what that player likes. For example, if you like vehicles, you're probably going to want maps like Goldman Railway. Fortunately though, since 2042, the team's got a new lead now in Vince Zampella, who of course game...
I need to make a video on this. I think I'm planning it for next week. I need to make a video about the history of Call of Duty versus Battlefield, because this was the COD guy. Like, this is who made COD 4. Like, it's fascinating. And like, there's so much to it. Like, he got essentially fired from Infinity Ward for apparently working behind the scenes with EA. Now, Activision got painted as the bad guy for this one, but lo and behold, he gets kicked out, fired, quit, immediately goes to work for EA, goes to Respawn, creates Titanfall. Now, Titanfall, pretty good. But then behind the scenes, I'm curious if they had like a non-compete of some sort, because clearly they broke that. But then years later, he heads out Battlefield. It's almost as though EA had a plan the entire time to do this. Like, we're going to hire you now, and basically you're going to make some games for us, because down the road, we're planning on you taking over for Battlefield. It does not seem like that.
Game directed Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, Titanfall, Apex Legends. I mean, he's possibly the best game developer in the industry right now.
For shooters.
It is rather strange, though, that previous Battlefield games have had such terrible launches, because it's definitely not a talent issue. I suspect 2042's was because they were trying new tech with 128 players, which they couldn't quite get to work, and because everything just got pushed back by 30% because of COVID remote working. Like, if you're a team leader and you can't walk past somebody's desk and check they're on track, the speed you can iterate is vastly reduced. And then, of course, a week before launch, the company you've outsourced to sends you this.
Yeah, Angel does it again.
And you sat there thinking,
Don't be sad. This is just how it works out sometimes.
It's not like they're deciding that at a team meeting. They're not like, hey, Bob, what do you want? I want Angel to do it again. No. Like, it's just not, you know. If Angel keeps doing it, somebody needs to tell him not to. They've combined Dice, Motive, Criterion, and Ripple Effect into Battlefield Studios, which is...
So to be clear, this is what Call of Duty does, where they have all of these studios working on one thing. And this is good. You're going to make a better game. But the difference is Call of Duty comes out every single year. Battlefield is not, or at least as of right now is not, which could be a huge leg up in their books. Because if that post-launch support could be huge for them, if they actually have 4 or 5 studios all working on this game post-launch.
We should just rebrand. All of those guys worked on 2042 and probably on some of the previous games.
That's also a good point. That's a really good point. If this was the case beforehand, okay.
But it's very likely they need the manpower because the single player is confirmed, and I gather there's going to be a battle royale as well, which hopefully will be separate and free, or it's probably just going to die off like Firestorm did. Because Firestorm actually had incredible potential. You know, unlocking tanks from vaults, the storm destroying the buildings behind you, so you literally had to run from it. I mean, it was a great idea. It was just behind a huge paywall.
I didn't play it, if I'm going to be honest.
I don't know if you noticed, but the teaser had the Battlefield 3 music in it, and it was also released exactly 14 years after the Battlefield 3 teaser trailer.
That is interesting.
So after all this time, what actually makes a good Battlefield game? These are the most popular Battlefield games by sales, but the way they all
Look at that. Look at that. Battlefield 1.
play is significantly different, and obviously each game has technologically improved significantly from the previous. For example, my and most people's beloved Battlefield 3. It had no separate aim down sight sensitivity, no universal soldier aim. It had a 10 hertz tick rate, which was brutal as you died constantly at the same time as the person you were shooting. There was insane smudge suppression that sometimes felt like your bullets were going at right angles, and everything was blue and the sun was ridiculous. But despite all this, for some reason, running around with an M4 was a heck of a lot of fun. Diving off Dam Van Peak never really got old. And flying jets around the tower
big moments, right?
border was endlessly enjoyable, with a real skill curve to the planes. In Battlefield 4, they fixed a lot of these technical issues. The smudge suppression was reduced. There was still no hit marker sound, but there were different sensitivity sliders, and universal soldier aim was introduced. Most of the servers now ran at 60 Hz, and there was a test range, which, by the way, should just be in every Battlefield game. Of course, you had the commander role as well, which was a bit of an interesting one, given it was usually somebody sat on their mobile on the loo.
Yeah, this was weird. This whole like mobile like commander thing. I remember when they were advertising that, I'm like, this is weird.
Dropping care packages. Anyway, destruction went to the next level with Levolution, which really was a first in multiplayer gaming at that time.
It was huge too. It wasn't just like a small thing.
You have the right to remain silent.
What year did that come out? Because I remember. Wait, let me look something up here. Battlefield 4 release date 2013. Okay, same year. Battlefield 4 came out same year as Call of Duty Ghosts. Now, when that happened, Call of Duty Ghosts tried to market this Levolution thing. And if you really think back of it, there was a couple maps. There was one that was in the jungle, and basically they had these logs stacked up. And if you'd shoot the logs, they would fall down a hill, and if someone happened to be standing there, it would kill them. The only thing it did. And they called that Levolution. Then Battlefield is out. They have entire skyscrapers that fall down. All of a sudden, Call of Duty doesn't talk about Levolution anymore.
We do. That's why we don't talk about Battlefield Hardline.
I actually liked Battlefield Hardline. I'm not gonna lie.
I actually didn't really mind it. I kind of liked the animals.
Oh yeah, you can fight a gator.
That's what I remember from the game. But I also remembered this crane and that you could take ammo off teammates, which for some reason was a massive deal for me. Battlefield 1 introduced insane sniping. The snipers also had a one-shot body shot sweet spot mechanic, which was sort of 50-50 frustrating depending on which side of it you're on. To balance the automatic guns against the majority of single shot and semi-automatic rifles, SMGs in particular were given a huge amount
Holy
of spread. I mean, literally
shit.
to the point where sometimes it was better to just hip fire. There was a very nice gas and gas mask mechanic, which might be coming back in Battlefield 6, given this guy's carrying a
True.
gas mask. Also, there were
A
specialist
lot of
pickups
people really
across
love
the map,
Battlefield
which
1 Killer
were
Shark.
actually very satisfying and very fair since you were marked on the map when you used them. Takedowns were taken to the next level. Obviously, they've been in since Battlefield 3, but these ones were brutal. All the vehicles came with some very nice animations. Tanks were particularly strong to fit the time period. Almost as strong as the horses.
Right, we're going a bit faster, boys. We got this. Attack for Narnia.
The losing team got a behemoth at the end of the round, either a Zeppelin, a train, or a dreadnought. I mean, I thought they were a fantastic way of stopping the end of a round
was
becoming
wild,
a landslide, and they led to some very
So that's the
cinematic-
question, right? Like they always like in like Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 specifically, and then Battlefield 1, they had these kind of like big set pieces like Zeppelin crashing, building falling, crane falling, and hardline. They need something new. So what do? Like what happens next?
In Battlefield 5,
Earthquake?
I don't know if it was the visual style, but at least for me, it felt a bit more hardcore. It was
I
also
hear
the first
nobody
attempt
talk
to
about
give
this game.
soldiers personality in a rather modern way, which didn't go down too well with the core audience. They led the trailer with a claw-armed female soldier, which I would imagine was rather niche for the time.
Hello, old friend.
However, some nice movement mechanics were introduced, like rolling when you dived out of windows. You also got knocked about significantly by explosions.
That's kind of cool.
Fortifications were added, and you were able to drag turrets about with vehicles, which was very nice. Even though 90% of players don't try and tactically use any of that stuff, it's still a really nice sandbox mechanic.
Oh my God!
Gunplay to me always felt a bit weird, and there were significant visibility problems at the game's launch, especially regarding prone LMGs. Again, it was seemingly rushed out. There was a lot of cool stuff in the trailer that was never added. Surviving plane crashes, for example. It was also
Well,
a
it's a
weird
trailer.
choice not to go for bigger World War II events, at least some of them. They realised this at the end because they released Iwo Jima, probably the best map in the game, but it was the last map released. The first one where you felt truly immersed, at least for me. Notably, they switched to a modern battle
I
pass mod,
did play
Ties
this
of War,
game.
for the first time in this game. It used to be a premium pass system where you had
I
to
remember
pay
the
for
menu.
DLC maps, so hardly anybody played those maps and they died out. Battlefield 2042 was technically probably the worst launch in Battlefield history. Almost an unplayable game. We've had a few of those. With what it's got, it's actually pulled itself together quite well.
Yeah, this
over
is
the
what I
last
hear
2
about this
years.
game every
I
time.
genuinely enjoy the gunplay. Bullets hit where they should. There's no visual recoil. The guns are satisfying and feel powerful and different. I think the plus system adds a terrific amount. Switching scopes and ammo mid-life really keeps the mechanics interesting. Does of course remove some teamwork with the
Yeah, I
plus
heard
system. You
wingsuit
can
was a
carry
huge W.
tons of magazines, and that's really the core problem with the game: teamwork.
So
Controversially,
here's what I'm predicting this right now, right? So Battlefield 2042 has now this like almost like cult following behind it, right? Oh, you agree Battlefield 2042 was bad and still is. But so exactly what you're saying. There's this group of people who are playing 2042 who I think are kind of like players who are between Call of Duty and Battlefield. They like the fast-paced action, but they also like the bigger play of Battlefield. So Call of Duty gives you this like feeling of being like the ultimate soldier, right? Whereas Battlefield kind of gives you the feeling of being this ultimate army. And 2042 kind of combines them both. And I think going into the next Battlefield, whether it be Battlefield 6 or the new Battlefield, if they're just calling it Battlefield, whatever it may be, I really think that they're going to go more towards the ultimate army as opposed to the ultimate soldier. And I think they're going to lose some people from 2042, but not a big deal because it's not even close to their biggest audience. So it's interesting.
2042 switched to a hero shooter system at the start. I think there was influence from other hero shooters doing particularly well for Battlefield to similarly monetize their battle pass. I mean, you don't need Nicki Minaj running around for people to want to buy custom skins.
I agree. Why are they still doing it?
I mean, she's not wrong, but it's because nobody's playing Warzone. You know, like an old game like Medal of Honor Warfighter had tons of really nice operator skins.
This is what
I know this
Modern
guy
Warfare
looked like a
2019
pineapple, but I really liked his ghillie suit.
He does look like a pineapple.
To be fair, a lot of the 2042 characters are memorable. Boris, Falk, Casper, and they're actually more memorable than previous games. I don't remember really any of the other characters since Bad Company 2.
Bad Company 2 had the best characters.
Apart from Wrecker, and that's only because he didn't get left behind.
We are not gonna leave you behind. No one gets left behind. We're not leaving them. We leave them. That's an order. Fuck you.
Something else that didn't get left behind was the previous games, as 2042 shipped with Portal, the promise you could build game modes from legacy games.
I remember this.
It was a great idea, but it was seriously overpromised and underdeveloped. To be fair, 2042 did introduce some nice sandbox mechanics. A grappling hook, a wingsuit, vehicle airdrops. I mean, you could literally drive a hovercraft up a skyscraper at launch.
What?
It's quite obvious all the games have something special about them. So if you're Vince Zampella, how do you know what to do? Should you have the suppression of Battlefield 3, the spread mechanics of Battlefield 1, or the clinical feeling of 2042? Is it okay to have the Fliegerfaust fiasco?
Dude, this is like what we were talking about with Call of Duty. Like, no one's ever going to be happy. They're never going to have a perfect game.
With Battlefield
they've had
5,
so many
or
iterations.
dare I say it, the M26 Dart disaster of Battlefield 3. Did those things improve the game? They were definitely fun for a while. I suspect it's being very aware of what's just nostalgia, but
Bugs.
also
We want
that
bugs.
immersion, fairness, and limiting frustration are critically important. Because the idea of games is you used to play them to relax, right? In Battlefield 3, there was an awful browser window server browser, but it gave you a notification if you were going to join a game with very few tickets left. That was removed, and I don't think it's ever been put back, so you might join 4 or 5 games in 2042, wasting 15 minutes before you can actually play. So you're frustrated before playing, which amplifies every frustration from that point.
100%.
FPS games are a balance of rewards versus punishments. If you're killing 4 or 5 people every time you die, you're being punished significantly less than someone who's dying every time they kill somebody. How well you're doing does impact how much you enjoy the game, until something immersive happens, like Flood Zone gets flooded and suddenly
This
you're
is a
swimming
really good point.
around in this abandoned city with infantry fighting vehicles floating past you.
Basically what he's saying is, like, if you look at Call of Duty, how much you enjoy a game is based off of how well you do. If you look at Battlefield, it's based off of how well you do, but it's also with those cool moments. Here's the thing though, those cool moments are fleeting. Once you've played 50, 100, 500 games, those cool moments are just, yep, this happens every single game, right?
But the punishments are less of a concern because you're in a battle. Goofy looking characters with cheesy voice lines remove immersion and are irritating, so amplify the punishments. It is why they should always try and keep a simple HUD in Battlefield games, and or have a toggle for full, minimal and off, because it does affect immersion. Squad play is really important because it reduces frustration. It lets you play the objective easier, which is satisfying because it moves the attention off pure kills, and it doesn't matter if you die a lot because you're getting picked up, so it's like, whatever. But the more the game is designed around squad play, the more frustrating bad teammates are. I mean, Battlefield players have literally been running around for 20 years now spamming give me ammo, and the game's constantly fighting them because they keep removing the ability to take magazines off support players. Half the player base runs around like headless chickens. In 2042, the best random teammates are usually AI. They'll guarantee smoke and revive you. This AI's in the top 3. They'll always give you ammo, and they won't try and run off with the vehicle that you've just airdropped in.
It's true.
Well, who wants to shoot AI in a multiplayer, or worse, be distracted by it when there's a real player nearby?
So here's what I say. Here's what I always say for any game, whether this be Call of Duty, whether this be Destiny, whether this be anything, any game. You need to be able to have as good of an experience playing solo as you do as playing with friends. Call of Duty does a pretty good job of that. Warzone, not so much, but Call of Duty does. skill-based matchmaking aside, and it's been worse. Hence why the game is probably doing worse. Destiny is the best, I think, looter shooter that you can play solo. And then, of course, you get into like the raids where it's difficult to do solo. But they've introduced things like LFG to help with that. But yeah, it needs to be as good. This is why one of the reasons why I haven't played Helldivers is because I've been told that for me to play at the top level, I can't do it solo. And I don't like that. I want to be able to perform at the top level solo. This is also why the raids in Modern Warfare 2 performed so poorly and we'll probably never see them again. The raids were really cool in that game, but you couldn't do them solo. So there was like probably 50% or more of the player base who just couldn't do them.
Bye. I'm sure there's something beneficial to be had with AI. I gather they're bringing back Portal 2.0 in Battlefield 6, so that might be a good place to test some configurations. Maybe, 5-man squads, 4 players, 1 AI with a bright blue UN helmet on or something, so you know it's AI. No gun just carries ammo, meds, and revives, but maybe AI is not even up to that. Spotting. The Great Dorito Hunt needs some work in the next game. There is already a very good contextual ping system in 2042. You should probably also know when you're spotted. They've kind of got this in 2042 with Rao's location revealed message above the minimap.
Yeah,
but if you're flanking and you don't know somebody spotted you, it's another completely random...
Call of Duty should do that. Warzone should do that. Like, do they when you're combat scouted? Or... like if you're spotted, I don't think you get a warning. I don't think. Am I wrong?
Control that's going to make you frustrated. Like any lack of knowledge is frustrating. It's why the balance of footstep sounds and things like that are really important. Fundamentally, name tags and Doritos should never display until part of your character appears from cover. With a few bullets to die, it makes a huge difference if someone's pre-aiming you. To be fair on Battlefield though, it's actually doing a lot right in 2042. It's one of the few games not infected by skill-based matchmaking, the biggest problem in modern gaming. And it actually balances cross-input pretty well compared to some other games. Skill-based matchmaking is designed to drive you to play through managing your frustration. It gives you a bit and takes away a lot, and most games have it really dialed in. In Warzone, almost every in-game action updates your SBMM stat. If you ask Activision for your personal data, you can...
This is the second Battlefield video we watched where the Battlefield community praises Call of Duty for skill-based matchmaking. This is the second time we have seen this in like the last 2 weeks. We'll let him finish saying what he's saying, but we're going to come back to this.
See, it updates every game. Within reason, you do want to match with people who are in a certain band of ability because part of the psychological enjoyment of winning comes from overcoming a challenge. There's a term for it, eudaimonia. It's what skill-based matchmaking preys on. This is fascinating. Destroying the worst players in the world probably is fun for a little while, but it can't happen because some people are literally disabled playing the game and their enjoyment needs protecting. Joy comes from variety. Sometimes you want tough people.
See, this is the answer. This is the part I was waiting for. This is why I said let him keep speaking before I cook.
Or you won't get better. And sometimes you don't want every game to be stressful. Really, you want to be playing a band of like 20-25% above and below.
And this is what people are saying, right?
Your ability, and the bottom 20% just needs protecting. The precision with which Warzone implements SBMM is just awful, and really probably not very good for you either.
Yeah, so this is exactly it. Is the community of Call of Duty is saying that every game you're in almost feels scripted. It feels like you're in the WWE of video games where before anything happens, it's all scripted. They know what's going to happen, and yeah, ask Logan Paul.
Crossplay, on the other hand, is a potentially really good development, but the cross-input that comes with it isn't fair. Cross-input is like playing golf, but some people have a driver to a 5-iron and others have a 6-iron to a sand wedge. Golf wouldn't exist now.
A really good analogy.
That was the way it was played. I mean, sure, you can putt with a driver and drive with a putter, but you're creating a level of frustration there that just doesn't need to exist.
It's a really good analogy for many, many reasons.
And it does change gameplay. If I'm playing Warzone on mouse and keyboard, I don't want to go in buildings because I know I'm at such a disadvantage to control a rotational aim assist at close range, which you literally can't compete with because a mouse and keyboard, when the enemy changes direction, there's an overshoot as you correct for that. Depending on how it's dialed in, rotation aim assist can do that for you. See, this looks clunky here, right?
Logan Paul is shockingly good in WWE, though. I've seen clips that you're not wrong.
But this is actually the best in the world. For tracking game, this is as good as mouse and keyboard gets. On the other hand, if you're on controller, you probably don't want to take mid-range fights with mouse and keyboard because it's significantly easier to control recoil on that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Battlefield, the sandbox nature of the gameplay means these things don't matter so much, but really, every modern game should have a toggle for crossplay and a toggle for cross input, so at least people have a choice.
Actually, didn't know XDefiant had that.
Fairness and limiting frustration. It's probably already what Vince Zampella's trying to achieve, or Apex Legends wouldn't have done so well. Nowadays, the standard is really high for FPS games. It's why so many die off so quickly. I mean, graphically, everything just looks like Unreal Engine. There may be a slight graphical...
That's my one worry with like games and the way that things are going. Is that every game almost looks the same with the engines that they're using, except for one.
Increase with Battlefield 6, given it's not going to the older generation of consoles, but it's not going to be anything like from Battlefield 3 to Battlefield 4, where you're like, whoa, my GDX.
This game does not look the same. This is one that people did get to preview. I didn't, unfortunately. And it's called South of Midnight. And I can't, who the hell was it? What did they make before? I can't remember what they made, but like this game does not look like anything else. They like literally like used claymation to create like the cutscenes and stuff like that. And I'm not gonna lie, this game looks pretty good and different. And we'll be checking it out once it comes out. I think it's March for that one, maybe April.
5.8 is not going to take that. It's going to start a house fire, you know. I've got to save up and SLI some 690s, which probably would have definitely caused a house fire. But, you know, that time's gone, and the focus on that, which probably let lower quality gameplay get away with being lower quality gameplay, has also gone. But it always felt like you were playing something new and fresh with those games.
True.
I suspect the April 2026 release date for Battlefield 6 is realistic, given they're probably trying to wait out GTA 6.
Yeah.
But I'd also imagine there'll be a beta at some point before Christmas, given what's happening with Lab.
That's a good question. When would the beta be? Summer would be the best time, but I think that's too far before release.
You know, in the end, Vince Zampella, Battlefield Studios, they don't need to worry. There's always a plan B. If everything goes to pot, they can just release Bad Company 2 with ray tracing.
I would
Bad
love
Company
that.
2.5. I'm sure people would love that.
I would.
I hope you enjoyed these thoughts, and I will catch you in the next one.
I love Battlefield Bad Company too. What a way to end that.
Cast your mind back.
I always find it interesting to get the opinion on certain things from other communities. The Battlefield community is way, way more welcoming to skill-based matchmaking than Call of Duty. I think because Call of Duty has been dealing with it for so long. And then he made a really good point there where they've gone overboard, where every game feels like it's scripted and we know exactly what's going to be happening. And I think he made a really good point where like almost all of the games look exactly the same these days because of Unreal Engine. And it's something that I think we talked about it with Call of Duty, and now let's talk about it with Battlefield. We need games to have personality. We need them to feel different. Modern Warfare 2019 had personality. It had the story of Verdansk. It had the characters. It had characters, right? And even in like the post-launch, it had the characters. It had the kind of like the military vibe to it. When they were releasing new characters, they weren't Nicki Minaj. They were Mace. They were Ghost. They were Soap kind of later. But like, you see what I mean? They weren't like these ridiculousness. It had, and you know what? If Modern Warfare 3 wanted to do their thing where they just went completely off the deep end, we are a complete arcade shooter. Okay, that's their identity. Fine. But commit to one. Right? Like, one of my biggest problems, and I think eventually I'll make a video about this, I just don't know how to word it correctly at this point. One of my biggest problems with Black Ops 6 is it is a Gulf War game that has almost nothing to do with the Gulf War. It has to do with Avalon. It should never have been marketed as a Gulf War game, ever. So yeah,